Hi everybody, McKay Tebbs here, and I'm excited to be with you today to explain the final project for this course to you. And congratulations to you for making it this far in the course. I know it hasn't been easy. There is a lot of work with all the assignments that you have to do and the tests and everything, but you're officially at the end of it all. We just have to make it through one more week. You can do it. You're almost there. So, the final project. The final project you create is going to be your own music, your own original song. It's going to be kind of like what you did for midterms, the midterm project, but it's going to be bigger. And you're going to include MIDI on it this time. For the midterm project, the only MIDI was the drums. But for this project, you can have MIDI be any instrument you want it to be. So let's go over the directions for this final project so that you can know exactly what to expect. And I do have these directions. They're posted on the assignment tab, so you can read them for yourself on the assignment tab. But I just wanted to go through them with you on this video so that you would know what to expect. So in this final project, you'll once again be writing and recording original music, but this time it will be a bigger recording that includes MIDI tracks. The midterm didn't include MIDI because we hadn't really worked with MIDI yet, and I just didn't know what your experience was so far. But by this point, you have worked with MIDI, so hopefully you're feeling pretty good about that. I want you to combine the skills you've gained in working with MIDI instruments and recording live sounds from an instrument to create a song that's 3 to 5 minutes long. So you're creating a song 3 to 5 minutes long. In that song, some of the instruments are going to be captured with live sound. So using miking techniques and microphones, you're going to have to put it up to some real live instruments. But then you're also going to be filling in the gaps with some MIDI instruments as well. So specifically, here's some instructions about the tracks themselves and what to expect. I'd like you to have 15 to 20 tracks in this session. So 15 is on the low side, 20 is on the high side. You could have in between 15 and 20, but try to hit that 15 mark if you can. 5 of those tracks should be mono. 5 of those tracks should be stereo. So I want you to gain some experience recording in both those waves like we've already done in this class. Mono recording works fine for so many situations, and that's always an easy go-to, but there are times where you want to do stereo recording as well. Now for those stereo tracks, I want you to refer to Chapter 6 of the Recording Engineer's Handbook and utilize the techniques that are discussed there in Chapter 6 for how to record in stereo. So the spaced pair techniques, the XY techniques, and I basically want 3 of your stereo tracks to specifically include examples from within that chapter. And the reason I want that is I want you to be experimenting. I don't want you to just do what you've always done. I want you to try something new, and then I want you to be able to compare and contrast these new experimental ways of miking with the other ways, so you can see how they sound different, so that you might have some experience to know when you would want to do which type of miking style. So do that, and then to let me know which tracks were recorded with which style of miking, I want you to use the comment box in your Pro Tools session. And I'll be showing you what a comment box is in a minute. Maybe you already know that, but I'll show you in just a second. And then 5 of your tracks should be MIDI tracks. Now your MIDI tracks can be anything. So you could have MIDI piano, you could have MIDI drums, you could have a MIDI bass sound, you could have MIDI synthesizer sounds. There's so many types of instruments that you could choose to do with MIDI. And so be creative and just make the decision about what you want to do, because you get to choose that. But do have at least 5 of them having some MIDI content on them and being MIDI tracks. Vocal tracks for this assignment are optional. In the midterm assignment, I had you do it because I wanted you to learn how to record vocals. But for this, you don't have to use vocals if you don't want to. And I just say that because I know some of you probably aren't singers and you're not comfortable singing and you don't really want to. So you don't have to. You don't have to sing on this if you don't want to. If you do want to, that's totally fine. You can sing, and you can include more than one vocal track, so you could have some background vocals if you want. If you're including vocals tracks, please remember to compress those vocal tracks like we learned earlier in this semester so that you can optimize the sound on those vocal tracks in the mix. And then always include a master fader track. Anytime you have a session open, you always want to have a master fader in there. And then also include a click track. A click track is going to help you so much when you're recording live audio so that the live audio will match up with the MIDI that you work, that you create. Because you know, if you've recorded all your live audio with a click track, then you know that it's going to match up the bars and beats. And then when you work in MIDI, it's always just whatever the tempo is of the song. Anyway, use a click track and record your instruments along to this click. It's a big part of recording live instruments. So if you haven't got experience yet recording to a click, then I'd like you to get that experience. It's very important. All right, now as far as drums go, you can choose how you want to do the drums for this project. If you want to do a MIDI drum beat like you did on the midterm, you can, and that would be fine. If you want to record real drums, live drums, you could do that as well. That would be fine. I'm assuming some of you are probably drum set players, and you might think that's really fun to try recording your own drum set, and I agree it would be. So you can do that. You could do it either way. It's your choice. And if you're going to record a drum set, I do want to ask you to please refer to chapters 7 and 8 in the Recording Engineer's Handbook, which are all about preparing your drum set for recording and then actually recording your drum set. So read those 2 chapters because they're going to be very beneficial if you're recording live drums. And then remember that if you're trying to fill up tracks, like maybe, you know, we have to get 15 to 20, maybe you've got 11 or 10 tracks and you're like, oh, what do I do for these last 3? You can always throw some percussion on them. You know, you can never have too much percussion in a song. So, you know, some woodblock sounds or a triangle or anything that's percussive that you think would fit the song, you could always throw that on a track to help you get the number of tracks you need. Now, as far as your live instruments goes, I want you to choose 3 live instruments from Chapter 9 in the Recording Engineer's Handbook, and I want you to use the techniques outlined in Chapter 9 to record those instruments. Chapter 9 is huge. It's such a big chapter, and I don't really want you to read the whole Chapter 9 all the way through. That is your resource as you're recording projects. You're gonna be like, oh, how do I record a flute? Oh, how do I record a violin? Oh, I've never done that. So that's what Chapter 9 is for, is you're always gonna have that chapter and you can look up how to record each and every instrument. And it's just such a good chapter because it's probably going to be one of the most useful things in that book after this class is over, because you're going to want to know how to record these things. However, I do want you to learn how to record 3 instruments in that chapter using the directions and the advice that are given in that chapter. I'd prefer it if they were instruments that you've never recorded before, because I'm assuming if you've already recorded something, you probably already know how to do that. But try and make it be instruments that you've never recorded before so that you can gain experience recording something new and know how to do that in the future. But anyway, 3 instruments of your live recorded instruments need to be referred to from this Chapter 9. Once again, use the comments section in your Pro Tools session to indicate to me which instruments were derived from the Chapter 9 techniques that you read about. And I'll show you that in just a second. Last thing is your song. It needs to have contrasting sections again. For the midterm project, you did an A and B section. For this project, you can also do an A and B section, but if you want to, you can also do a C section, a third contrasting section. You know, this song's meant to be just a little bit longer. The midterm project was 2 to 3 minutes. This one's going to be 3 to 5 minutes. So the way you structure it's going to be different. So instead of going A, B, A, you'll probably be going A, B, A, B, you know, adding an extra B section. Or if you want to include that C section, you're going to go A, B, C, and then A. And anyway, right here in the middle of the page here, it gives you kind of a breakdown of how that's going to work. I don't want to give you a strict guideline about this. I want it to happen, but I want you to decide the best way to do it for your song. You know, whether that's just having 2 sections and going back and forth a couple of times, or whether that's including a third section. But I do want you to make it at least 3 minutes long. So think about that. Think about how many times you can repeat each section to get it to at least be there. But hopefully not more than 5 minutes. 3 to 5 minutes long will be perfectly. And after you create your first and second section of the songs, use copy and paste. You copy section A, put it right after section B. And then you copy section B and put it right after that next section A. So now you have A, B, A, B. Watch the transitions. Think about how those two sections transition into each other, because you don't want it to be choppy or abrupt. You want it to flow into itself so that you don't really notice that you're going to a new section. But anyway, that's part of the creativity. Just do your best with that. And remember that with your song, it doesn't have to be a perfect song as far as the songwriting goes and the performing goes. You don't have to feel like you have to play and perform super perfect and polished. Just do your best, but I do want you to produce a polished recording within that context. So anyway, I've got an example here for you, and this example is a song that I wrote and that I've been working on lately, and it's got about 15 to 20 tracks in it, as we've been discussing, and it's got half of the tracks are MIDI tracks, and the other half are audio tracks. And so I just want to kind of show this to you, just to kind of give you an example of what I'm doing. First of all, I do have a click in this song, and right now it's muted, but if I unmute it, I'd hear a click. And this click was very useful to me when I was laying down my audio track so I could line everything up with the beats. Here's my master fader track right under here. I also have some effects tracks created, delay, reverb, flanger, so that I can route those effects to my different tracks. And up here in the MIDI side of things, right underneath, I have a MIDI submix that I'm using to control the overall volume of all the MIDI tracks together. But anyway, I just arbitrarily picked some instruments. One of the instruments I picked was a clavinet. So the clavinet I picked has this wah sound to it. This wah filter is just going wah, wah. It's kind of bouncing back and forth between my two speakers. I really like that sound. And when it's buried in the mix, it definitely adds, a really cool element to it. At least I was thinking. I also have a flute. Now this is a MIDI flute, and MIDI flute doesn't sound like a real flute, but if you open up my my instrument, I'm using Expand, and I use this EP Polysound plus an ocarina. Ocarina is this little handheld flute device, and by blending those two sounds together, I got this flute sound that I like, and I think it works with this song. I also have some bells going on in my mix. And then I have some piano tracks here as well. And it's another MIDI part that I created. And last of all, I'll just show you my strings part. I was using Expand again, and I found this pizzicato string sound that I think sounds amazing. I think it sounds very realistic, to be honest with you. So I really like that when a string sounds realistic like that. But one more thing I'll mention about all my MIDI tracks is that the way that I got them into Pro Tools is I created this song in Finale, where I wrote it out with notes. I wrote out all the notes for how I wanted this song to go. And then I took that Finale file and I exported it as a MIDI file. Then I came in here to Pro Tools and I imported that MIDI file. And when I did that, it had all the data for all my MIDI parts here. So if you look at the piano part and at the pizzicato strings part, it's actually the same exact part, the same MIDI notes, because I extracted it from the same file with each other. But I wanted to get two different sounds with that MIDI notes. Anyway, the reason I bring that up is because sometimes as a composer, it's, you might think on a piece of paper first and you might write it out that way first. But after you write it out that way, you can get your ideas into your Pro Tools session and assign these MIDI instruments to them, rather than having to use the pencil and just mark it in, which I've done plenty of that too, because there's times where that's very appropriate and it works great. Lastly, I'll just show you that I have a bass track here. So this is a MIDI bass track. It's just got kind of a MIDI sound that I thought was pretty cool with it. But one thing that I thought would be cool to do is to blend that with a real bass sound. So down below, I have a real bass guitar playing the same line. So I have a blended sound for the bass there. I have them both panned to the exact same spot. And my goal was to have the real bass sound on top and the MIDI bass sound just kind of underneath it and supporting it. And I think that I basically got that sound going on. But then let's look down below at my live audio tracks. I recorded a lot of guitar tracks on this, so it's basically a bunch of different guitar ideas. First of all, these two guitar tracks here, this is my intro guitar, and this is an idea I came up with for the intro. So it's all by itself, a solo guitar sound before the rest of the song starts and before the rest of the instruments come in. Notice that there's two of them, and notice that they look exactly the same. This is a technique called double tracking. And with double tracking, you're basically doubling the sound of the guitar in this case, because the guitar is double tracked. And it's another way of producing a stereo recording. So these are two mono tracks, but I had two microphones and I used them to capture this guitar part. And so it's like stereo recording, but with double, or with two mono tracks. But anyway, traditionally, double tracking has been used when you want to strengthen the sound of an instrument by doubling it. And when there's two of this same instrument on two different tracks, it makes it sound twice as strong, basically. So it's kind of this atmospheric guitar instrument, holding chords, playing little melody lines. And then the song starts with my main groove, and that's where this guitar track comes in. It has a riff, and that riff sounds like this. But the next thing is the slide guitar. I have the slide guitar part, and this slide is basically the main melody of the song. So that's what I have up front and center. That's what I have raised in volume, louder than all the other instruments. So remember, if you're not using a lead vocal, then pick an instrument to be your lead instrument and center the rest of your mix around it. But anyway, I have this slide guitar here playing the main melody. And if I take off one of the mutes, or one of the solos, you can hear how it sounds all by itself, which, you know, it still sounds fine, but if I include that second track, it definitely beefs it up more, makes it bigger, and that's what I was going for here. Okay, and then I have some guitar fills under here, and these guitar fills they're playing a counterpoint to that slide guitar melody. So in between, when the slide's holding notes, the guitar fills are filling up that space. Last of all, I do have an acoustic guitar sound, and I tried to make this a sparkly acoustic guitar sound. So if we add that into there, all right, so anyway, one thing you'll notice about my song that I was just showing you is all my audio tracks were guitar. Ugh, what the heck, can you do that? Sure, you know, be creative in your own song. If you want to have a lot of guitar tracks in there playing different ideas, different parts, I totally get that because I do that all the time. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a different instrument for each of those audio tracks. It could be though, and that'd be really cool too if you want to layer all these different real instruments on top of each other. But I guess it does have to be 3 different live instruments because I do want you to try recording 3 new instruments that you've never tried before. But anyway, we're almost done, so let me get to the last of the directions here. You know, if you're new to songwriting and you want some help with what a verse, a chorus, and a bridge are, check out this video link right here, and make sure to start at 3:16 because the first 3 minutes are kind of long and a very long introduction into the content material. So start at about 3:16 and then you can get right into where it starts talking about that. But basic mixing and editing requirements. So adjust the faders in the mix so that there's an appropriate balance between all the tracks. Adjust the panning on each track so that each track can have its own spot on the mix. And go through your tracks and do your best to clean them up. Now remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. And especially if you're in a hurry doing this at the last minute, you can leave some imperfections in there and that's okay. But I would love it if you used the editing commands that you learned in Chapter 9 of the Pro Tools book in Lesson 9 to edit out some of those mistakes, because that's exactly what happens during recording. There's always stuff here and there that doesn't work, and you're always going to have to edit things together to make it work. So I'd love to see that in your session somewhere. And before I move on, let me show you this. I just realized I forgot to do this. So there is a dialog box right here where you can select certain parameters to be shown or to be not shown. And see how I'm just checking these boxes here, and as soon as I do, it shows another thing here. This is too much. I don't want all that much to be shown, so I'm going to uncheck. But the reason I bring this up right now is because I forgot to do it a second ago when we were in Pro Tools. But so here's your Pro Tools, and here's your comments box. Do you see how you can click it on and off? And I want you to turn the comments on this session, and you do that right up here in this little left-hand corner, right above your top track. There's a drop-down menu, and that's where you do it. Now what you're gonna do is you're gonna indicate to me, for example, which tracks are your stereo tracks. So here's the slide guitar 1, and so you can put stereo, slide, and then come down here to the next one and put stereo, slide. And then I'll know that those 2 tracks are part of your stereo tracks. Let's say you've never recorded an acoustic guitar before, and this is your first project recording an acoustic guitar, and you did it out of Chapter 9. You could come here to that acoustic guitar and write Chapter 9 recording techniques. And then I'm gonna know that that instrument was one of the instruments that you used Chapter 9 to record your acoustic guitar with. Okay, so anyway, just want to make sure you knew how the comments box worked. Bounce and share your mix. So we're going to have you bounce an MP3 of this, just like you did with your midterm, but I want to encourage you to share it to the rest of the class in a discussion page that I'm creating on the Canvas page for this. So bounce the MP3 out, upload it to the Canvas. It's called Final Project Share, and put your MP3 there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that discussion an extra credit discussion where you can log in and you can listen to each other's songs, each other's projects by clicking on those MP3 links and listening. And my goal with that is I really think that as students you learn a lot and are inspired by the other students in the class. At least you can be with some interaction like this. So I want you to listen to other people's songs, hear what they're doing, think, oh, that was a good idea. I should try that on my song next time. And then you're gonna write a little, very short paragraph just talking about your process, the unique things you did in your song, maybe some of the challenges you faced. And then that's another thing that people can learn from as they listen to your song. They'll think, oh, well, so-and-so was having a problem with phase cancellation on this, but I can hear how they solved that problem because I'm listening now. So that's pretty cool. It's extra credit. So when you post your song up to this discussion forum, you'll get 5 extra credit points. And then every comment you leave on someone's song will earn you 1 extra credit point. So there's about 20 people in the class. So total, that's the potential to get 25 extra credit points, which is basically like, 2 missing assignments or more than 2 missing assignments in the class if you listen to all of them. You don't have to listen to all of them, but everyone you listen to, you'll get another extra point for. And so they add up that way. So bounce and share your mix as an MP3 file to that discussion forum on Canvas. And last of all, upload your whole session into the Google Drive for this as your final project. And please include the audio files in your audio files folder. I know I've talked about that before, but still I have people making, I know it's a mistake, you didn't mean to, but just double check and make sure those audio files are in the folder when you zip it, so that will be there when I go and I try to look at your song and see what you did. This project is worth 200 points. So that's kind of a lot just for this one. That's 20% of your grade. So if you didn't submit this project and you're at an A, that would drop you down to a C for your final grade. So it's very important that you submit it. It's also very important that you do your very best work on this so you can get the maximum amount of points possible. Anyway, that's it for this video. That's it for the final project. Good luck with it, and please let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to help. All right, see you later.